Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of Oh My Malware. This is a channel where we grab real malware samples and we run them, just as if users would after receiving them within an organization via any malicious attempt that we know of, or perhaps any new ones that arise. The reason we do this is to see what coverage we would get for that specific malware sample if we were running Elastic Security, specifically with the Elastic Defend integration for Elastic Agent, which is part and parcel of what you get with every single Elastic Security deployment. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a sample by the OilRig group. This particular sample is a malicious Word doc, which I think started to get distributed back in 2018 or something like that. It was the OilRig group is notoriously known for targeting various different sectors, including government. Sometimes you might hear the group as APT34 and a few other names as well. And this particular Word doc uses a Trojan known as Bond Updater, which uses specific DNS exfiltration techniques. So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to run the sample, I should say, and see what results we get within Elastic Security. So let's go ahead and do that. As usual, what I like to do is run the sample on 2 different machines simultaneously. The difference being one of them is running the Elastic Defend integration in what we call detection only mode, meaning we'll still get alerted, but will allow everything through. So it's like passively detecting everything, but not preventing anything. And the second machine is the exact inverse, where we have everything on in prevention mode, meaning if something should be prevented, we will actively try and prevent it. So I want to go ahead and do that. Let's extract let's get this notification. Let's extract the sample and run it. Extract all. That's the first one. Okay, this is a Word doc, so I'm just gonna give it the right extension. And let's do it. There we go. That took a while. I don't care about the new look. No, there we go. You can see various different characters on the screen, whatever. We're going to go with enable content. And we immediately start getting some alerts there. Do the exact same thing here. In this case, we got prevention alert and the doc is already gone, which is great. We'll see obviously more outcome in Elastic. In this case, there's a handful of things going on here. Okay, so what I typically like to do is I'll pause the recording here for about 10 minutes or so, just to give the malware time to do everything it needs to do, and also to let the alerts within Elastic Security run on any respective schedule. So I'm gonna pause the recording, and then we'll be back in about 10 minutes. Okay, so it's been just over 10 minutes, more or less, actually closer to 15. And we have a significant amount of alerts. There's a few repetitive ones, but I think I know why. I'm just clicking the summary here. So 30 alerts across both machines. Typically, what we always do is we'll start by looking at the detection machine first. So let's go ahead and filter for that specifically. All right, so 29 of those 30 are happening on the detect machine. As we saw together after we ran that doc, it was prevented pretty much straight immediately, which is great to see. But let's go ahead and take a look here. So there's a lot of Windows script executing PowerShell and suspicious execution via scheduled task. So 12 and then 10 of this one. We have, not surprisingly, local scheduled task creation. We have malicious behavior alerts. One of them is, don't think you'll be able to see this in the recording, execution of a Windows script file written by a suspicious process. We have another behavior for PowerShell obfuscation spawned via Office. We have script file written by Microsoft Office process and suspicious executable file creation, and also suspicious Microsoft Office child process, both from a behavior perspective and the SIM rule. So a lot going on here. I did shut down the machines already because as we'll see as we go through these, the schedule task is set to run every minute. And we didn't want that. It will just dirty the alert workflow here. They're all going to be related. So let's start from the first one. Malicious behavior detection alert, suspicious executable file creation. So let's take a look at what that is. All right, so it seems after word ran, this apppool.vbs file was written. VBS is typically a script that can be run with native Windows tools such as WScript, and yes, VB scripts. The pretty common technique. So probably this Word doc had a macro, not probably did have a macro that ran after it ran created this specific file, and you can see we picked that up there because it was spawned via Word. And if we wanted to see a bit more detail, let's just look really quickly. Let's say a process. Yeah, so you can see Word that basically launched, created that script. Okay, that's the first one that makes sense. So it seems like after that Word file opened, must have been a macro. We know there was a macro because we enabled the content, right? So whenever someone enables content, that means there's a macro that's going to be run. And it seems that that macro ended up writing that file. We can take a quick look at the event analyzer. Oh, a lot going on here. Let's take a look. So we can see Word. I don't want to jump too ahead. I want to go through the alerts, but we can see, I think this is a Microsoft process, nothing to be worried about here. Yeah. And then there's WScript, which then spawned another 2 child processes. Looks like command prompt was opened, and there's 2 alerts around it. Scheduled tasks, which we know we've been seeing in our alert list, and the alert there. PowerShell, 2 alerts around PowerShell, file events, a couple of network events as well. So we'll take a look at those as we go through the alerts, but pretty extensive tree here. Okay, let's continue looking at some of the other alerts. So suspicious MS Office child process, we know why this ran. Because, yeah, you can see the WinWord and then launch WScript to be able to run that VBS script. Looks like that script was also created in C program data Windows app pool, which, yeah, this is probably native to this attack. Again, we don't do reverse engineering on this channel, and I will link this particular really good write-up by Unit 42, specifically for that talks about bond updater. They go into all the ins and outs, especially around the DNS exfiltration techniques that they use, which we'll see, I think, as part of the alerts here. But we can see here, WScript launched that VBS script, which is present in this Windows app pool directory here. There is an investigation guide for this one if we want to take a look, but we're familiar with this alert. We've been through it in other episodes. Essentially, Office programs opening up suspicious especially when it's living off the land binaries like WScript. We had another one here, very related to what we've been saying. Execution of a Windows script file written by a suspicious process. So we know why this happened based on basically what we've been saying. So identifies the execution of a script written by a suspicious application. Script interpreters are often launched during exploitation of obvious applications, which is exactly what happened here, right? We can take a look a bit more detail if we wanted to. I always like doing that. So this is the script, the apppool.vbs file, which we've been seeing. And we can take a look. By the way, this is a good opportunity as well, just to note how much info is included in these events. You know, the logon type, the elevation tokens, the user flags. These are all really helpful bits of information when you're going through these alerts as well. Okay, nothing that we don't know so far, pretty much what we expect to see here. All right, let's go to the next one. This is, we know why this happened. I'm not going to go through this one because it's very it's repetitive of what we've seen already from the sim one. And then we have script file written by Microsoft process here. Again, we know why this happened. Just read the thing a bit. Identifies the execution of a script file written by a Microsoft Office application. If you're hearing noises in the background, that is my cat interrupting me. And you can see it also says their script interpreters are often launched during exploitation of Office applications. So again, pretty much what we expect. We can just take a quick look at the file name if we wanted to. This is actually a different one, you see. So this is probably related to the PowerShell we're about to see. So before we saw apppool.vbs, this one's apppool.ps1. So that VB script actually does create this PS1 script, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. It could be the macro creates them both. If I'm not mistaken, the VB script creates the PowerShell script. But we can probably determine that as we keep going through. And yeah, we're starting to get a glimpse into what CMD was instructed to do. It looks like create that scheduled task to call that VB script. But we'll get to that in a second, I guess. Okay, let's carry on. And then, surprise, surprise, we see Windows script executing PowerShell. So let's take a look here. Yeah, so we can see here PowerShell was launched via WScript there. So for sure, this is coming as a result of the VB script being run. And we can see it basically launched this apppool.ps1 script as well. You'll notice they use the same convention for the directory and all the files. So Windows apppool, apppool.ps1, apppool.vb. So these are very, you know, easy to identify when going through your own investigations if you ever had to be coming across this. Another one here. So this is around PowerShell obfuscation. This was a behavior detection. Identifies Microsoft Office application starting Windows PowerShell with a suspicious command line. I think I know why it's suspicious here, because it probably had the bypass argument in there to bypass any PowerShell restrictions. You can see bypass here. So that's probably why this was picked up. We can actually take a look later at the rule itself. But yeah, you can see that PowerShell script was launched via this apppool.vbs script. Okay, so really good coverage so far. Several, you know, you can really see defense in depth kicking in here at every stage of the operation. And then we have suspicious execution via scheduled task and Windows script executing PowerShell. And you can see these two are very repetitive, because as we'll see in a bit, that scheduled task was actually set to run every minute. That's why I stopped it. So let's just take a look at the first one here to see what we're looking at. So you can see here system 32, which is where if scheduled tasks would have created this, would have started from. Start process, W script, calling that VB script. So look, that is the repetitive motion here, it seems. So every time the scheduled task run, W script launches that VB script, which would launch that PowerShell script, it seems. What I'll do is just so let's take a look at exactly what this is looking at. I'm just open up the rule here. Always very convenient to have the query available to you, that you can see what we're looking at, what this query is looking for. Parent process name SVC host, which is where runs out of system 32, and process parent schedule, and process P file original name in. Yep, these are the specific child processes that we're looking for, which were deemed to be specific, unusual for scheduled tasks to run, like PowerShell, CMD, W script. So that's exactly what we've been seeing. And not only that, but we look for suspicious paths based out of, malware doesn't have full permission unless you're running an elevated privileges to install and run out of everywhere. These are the typical directories where it can write to and run from, right? So users, program data. So this is why we deem them to be suspicious. And a few other exclusions here to reduce the number of false positives. Okay, so we know we know what we're looking at there as well. Let's close this. We know why this is going to trigger. We saw it already. Same thing. We'll just look at the last one here that's different, which is this local scheduled task creation. And we probably know why this is happening, right? We saw that. Let's just look at the process arguments. Oh, this is a sequence, right? So let's look at the query here instead of going to the rule. So this is saying, hey, where we see a process which is not ending and the process name is with any of these typical living of the land binaries, or something which is not trusted, followed by process where the event type is a start and the process name is scheduled task. And you can see also we're looking for specific process arguments because this is looking for a creation event, like create process args. So very easy to understand why they triggered here. What I want to show you though is what actually is this PowerShell script doing, right? We see in a lot of this PowerShell events happening. So we can actually go ahead and look for it because we have those PowerShell events there. So let me just grab the process ID and we can take a look perhaps at that PowerShell script real quick. Actually, I could just probably, and this is going to be Windows PowerShell. Sometimes it's just really useful for you to know what you have available to you when investigating this stuff. Maybe I did not. Or perhaps I might not even have turned it on. Let me just make sure. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. So you see all these creating script block texts. Every time a PowerShell script runs, we collect all the output of that script invocation. And you can see here, you can see the command line there, the engine state for that command. So every time what happens when the script runs, it creates this sort of running engine. It becomes available and then it stops. So it would also, you see, it's called an engine lifecycle event. So what we could do is look at the script block here, similar to what we did in the last episode. Let me just grab. Again, I'm no like real PowerShell expert, but sometimes the smallest thing can give off what this is trying to do. Remember, I said this is based on that report. Oh, I should copy, not what I wanted to copy. Based on that report, does DNS exfiltration. Let's copy this here. Copy the clipboard. That's what I wanted. And again, I'll just put this in the notes just because in Markdown it's easier to read. It's a big script log. So yeah, it's doing it's doing a lot. And you can see it starts to reference some DNS APIs as well, because it's really interesting. What it does is it actually uses the DNS subdomains between the C2 server and the victim to identify if it's ready to receive files, to actually identify what type of files it receives, obviously to send the outcome back of any C2 commands. So it does a lot of that there. And you can see some comments like kill the process and stuff. What I want to look for, if we go into let's take a look at the tree again, the process tree. So this is basically describing everything we've seen in the alerts. So you can see the command call, the CMD call, calling the scheduled task creation, and then the actual scheduled task itself. Here's that PowerShell being run from that script. And you can see these 8 network connections here. Now, this domain is no longer active. And I know this because one of my colleagues actually owns the domain. So we're keeping you all safe by actually owning that domain. But you can see it tried to make 8 network requests to this withyourface.com domain, which you'll actually find in that report. And you'll notice sometimes the subdomain. So you can see it's all, this is the fact having long subdomains like that is always an indication of probable DNS exfiltration. But you can see sometimes there are zeros in front of the 8, sometimes they're after. That's the type of call. So the type of how it's telling the C2 what it wants to do, basically, which is pretty clever. So you see this with your face, that's probably going to be somewhere within that PowerShell script. So we can actually, let's try and look for that. I'll just do a blanket. See if we spot anything there. Yeah. So you can see 28 of those script blocks. So obviously that's scripted a lot, right? But let's take a look at one where there was the call to the C2. So you can see what that looks like. Why do I never start by filtering? I never learn from my mistakes. And let's take that. Let me do the same thing. You can see it's a much longer script here. Just want to copy this. Okay, you can see straight away withyourface.com as the domain. You can see all the directories. It seems here it's looking for specific files that we can actually take a look to see if those were created or not. So this is how it identifies its its running state probably. And again, you can see parse system.net DNS. So it's once it receives the message back, depending on the blocks that it sends back, it parses that out and then does what it needs to do from its its payload or C2 response perspective. So pretty clever. Not a new technique, it's been used a while, but just seeing these things in the wild is pretty comprehensive sometimes, the detail we get. Okay, great. So we took a look at that. We have identified what this is trying to do. Obviously, this is not going to be, it will try to make those C2 requests out, but it never will because that domain is no longer active. But you can see what it does. Obviously, there's still some lingering, there would have been some lingering things on this machine, right? So we have the scheduled task that would run every single minute. So that would need to be cleaned up. There are the files that are created. So actually, if we look at these 8 files here, you see the creation of that quid and lock file. So that's probably how it tracks the state. So these are things we'll have to clean up. That apppool.ps1, apppool.vbs files. So that is something you do as part of your incident response process. Cool. So we went through all of that. Pretty extensive coverage. Great detection from a behavior standpoint and also the SIM standpoint. Like we said, I'm going to count these as sort of one in terms of coverage because they're very, very repetitive. But so let's say we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 alerts here in detection mode. 9 unique alerts, I should say. Let's pivot to prevention. We all know what this is going to look like now. Because we saw it happening on invocation. In this case, we have that one alert where it identified a suspicious script being created via Word, and it just killed Word as the parent process, and apppool.vbs could not run because it couldn't actually call wscript and do whatever it needed to do. So what I always like to show here is the responses. So you can see basically Word could not complete the macro, essentially. Excellent. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. This is it was a pretty cool sample to look at, especially with the DNS exfiltration techniques. Once again, what I do is when I have these extensive reports, we have our Discord server. So please join us there if you want to discuss the episode, but I always typically put the result, I should say this particular link in the channel for the episode as well. And as always, I provide the VirusTotal link on ohmymalware.com, as well as the sample events, link to this exact Elastic Security instance for you to use. If you are enjoying this content, please do subscribe to the channel. It just really helps get the content out to whoever would be interested in watching it. My name is James. Hope you all enjoyed, and stay safe.